Right, a few things to acknowledge up top here, guys. First of all, Luton were fantastic in their first home game, as they called it, against genuine Premier League giants. And there's a lot to acknowledge about Liverpool as well. I've got to admit, there have been some games where I've not quite been able to put my finger on it. Some other analysts, or I'm not an analyst, but some analysts have been able to put their finger on it. Some people have been kind of hinting at it. And today I think we saw, and maybe Liverpool got away with, and to an extent also just had a weird game, but got away with a lot of the things that people saw as weaknesses in this Liverpool side. Now, no side is weakness free, but we certainly are going to look into it in this post-game. Welcome back to the Laurence McKenna channel. If you've not already hit subscribe, feel free to hit it. If you're specifically a Liverpool fan, we're going to start a Liverpool channel. There's a link in the description below. But I want to talk a little bit about what Luton exploited immediately after we just say, we wish you all the best, Luis Diaz, a man who had a message to probably the captors of his father, but also his father, basically a message saying, free my dad, free Papa, on the front of his shirt. Now, after scoring that goal, you genuinely, I think, obviously after you become a dad, you realize how important the relationship and the bond between a father and a son is, even more so than when you have your own dad. But at the same time, then to be able to go out there with a huge amount of pressure, maybe this shows, I think, an element of the different ways in which people see football and the different ways in which people treat football. Some people see it as a job, some people see it as a release, some people see it as a way of life. There are lots of different ways of doing it. You can imagine that there has been an incredible support network around Luis Diaz, but the fortitude, the mental strength to be able to come and play in a Premier League game, even as a late sub, having to watch that, I can't imagine what that's like. So obviously everyone wishes him all the best, and that will continue until the situation is resolved. Let's talk a little bit about this Liverpool team that started the game and why, to an extent, it opened up the game for Luton, but at the same time, why these weaknesses that are going to be exploited are possibly just part of the modern system and why we see that, right? So first of all, you're going to start Joe Gomez in a side, not necessarily his strongest side. Obviously, you want to see him starting over there, but Liverpool only have so many options, and maybe they didn't see Konstantinos Tsimikas as a good option on that side. Maybe they wanted to see more of a centre-back type, and then they wanted to see Trent coming into midfield a little bit more, offering a little bit of support in that area. And ultimately, actually, Luton exploited quite a lot of that on the day where Liverpool didn't quite look at the races in the midfield area. Weirdly, I've not given these ratings, by the way, so 7.9 for Trent. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but at the same time, I think there were a lot of weaknesses on this side, and they were there to be exploited by a couple of Luton players. Talk about that in a second. Having said that, Liverpool's expected goals was 3. 1 for Luton, but relatively 1. Expected assists also pretty high, ball possession really high. This is one of those games where statistics and the eye test don't necessarily line up. To a lot of people, and I think the people who watch Match Today, the people who only watch the highlights of this game, will say things like, Liverpool didn't deserve to win this one. Luton deserved that. I think Luton created the better of the chances in the game, or at least the more obvious of the chances. But that is this Liverpool side. That's always been this Liverpool side under Jurgen Klopp. It's not about creating those obvious chances. It's not about creating those chances that are, ridiculously frequently exactly the same chance. There is variation in this Liverpool side. There's creation in this Liverpool team. And sometimes creativity means there is a tenuous link between getting a goal and not getting a goal, and sometimes a big gap. Having said that, again, this chart, I always kind of reference this post-game. You can see that Luton were basically trying to counter-attack at Liverpool, get a scalp here. I think to an extent they deserved it, not necessarily because they were the better team, but I think because of the game plan that they executed against Liverpool and how well they executed it. I think teams deserve the credit, especially when it comes to scalability in the Premier League and the scale that Liverpool are at and the scale that Luton are at and where Luton have come from and Liverpool are. Having said that, both of them have very different agendas and aims this season. You can see where Liverpool were really pressing. And there's like a little line here, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little line here that basically when you go above it, it means you're doing more than just controlling the game. You're actually putting some pressure on the opposition. And let's be honest, this Liverpool team, apart from maybe Joe Gomez, is probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, that Liverpool can start outside of putting, so many people are disrespectful of Jota. I feel like he's almost perfect for the Luton game, the carries that he had, all those kind of things. Anyway, there are a couple of notes in here that I kind of want to put. This here is very different to basically showing this was Liverpool's average formation in this game. Liverpool's average formation. And I saw a great piece on Tifo IRL earlier this week. I can't remember who by, but it basically was talking about the difference between positions and roles. And this Liverpool side have a very good understanding of roles, and you can clearly see that creates positions within the side. These are their two central midfielders right here. I'm just going to thicken that line a little bit for you. These are their two central midfielders right here. This is their right side. This is their left side. And these are their two centre-backs with McAllister there, possibly again, caring more about his role than his position. Although in this kind of team, that role and position are probably the biggest crossover of the whole side. Because obviously, look at Salah out there. Obviously, look at Jota dropping a little bit deeper. We'll get into that in a second. But what was interesting was when you have that is Liverpool's midfield. And technically, I think Trent fits into that as well. When you have that, and you don't necessarily have a role of destroyer, or you don't necessarily have a strong role of 6. I'm not saying that therefore McAllister's a weak player, but I think there is a weakness there that people try to exploit, and Luton did exploit on the counter-attack. You see where Liverpool basically struggle to keep up in the game. And I'm going to highlight a couple of things here. I'll go to the midfield in a second. I want to highlight the right-hand side. This is Joe Gomez during this game. Clearly, there was a lot for him to do around this area because that was where they were trying to get the out ball for Luton's players. So he had to make a lot of tackles in this area. He also had to support, obviously, Jota, his overlap there. And I'm just going to contrast this. Contrast that with Andy Robertson, who's slightly deeper, but also slightly more progressed, right? Look at that. Basically, I mean, this is the difference. That's where Joe Gomez inhabits. That's where Andy Robertson inhabits, and obviously the corners help him quite a lot. But you get my point. Like, there is a difference between the two roles here. This is Andy Robertson against Bournemouth before he got injured. You can see Klopp tried to change that with Tsimikas. Look, this, again, I'll highlight it. This is where Joe Gomez was. Almost completely vacated that area now, and that is where Tsimikas is. Those two areas that Andy Robertson was much more. These are roles that Liverpool are trying to play in those positions, right? And the difference between those two was what Luton were basically looking to exploit and run at Virgil van Dijk, get Virgil van Dijk stuck in this no man's land right here, and basically then cut them off with a ball, goal. The amount of times where you saw Virgil van Dijk not quite able to go over, not quite able to come back, or even the counter-attacking goal where Virgil van Dijk wasn't there, Konate was sprinting back. You saw kind of a half-hearted tackle from McAllister, who sometimes can be culpable for that kind of thing, but I think also struggles because he's not necessarily solely that 6. Let's look at the Copa Libertadores and buy someone from that area. Not that I know whether that's actually going to change those roles. But then, of course, you've got the average positions. I mean, look at the difference between the average positions of Liverpool. Liverpool basically camped out on the halfway line and above. Luton camped out on the halfway line and below. But you can see there were 3 very clear outs, right? And when you look at that, and then you look at Liverpool's midfield, and you look at the fact that Virgil van Dijk got stuck between 2 areas, partially because in this midfield area, and again, I'll go to this left side, you've got Ryan Gravenberch, who's basically a progressed 8, with Jota dropping in here, right? And then you've got Jota, a bit more scattered around, trying to pick up the ball a little bit deeper, drive with it in the same way as Gravenberch was, in the same way as quite a few Liverpool players were. You saw Konate drive at one point, almost Matip-esque way. Liverpool have been briefed on these roles, again, that they have to play. Drive into that Luton half, try and exploit it, try and get the ball off to a Nunez or a Salah, let them cross it in. That's almost beyond the point, right? Now look at this other half of the pitch. Look at where... did I get the Ross Barkley heat map? I didn't put in Ross Barkley's heat map. I really should have done that. Give me a sec. Wait. Where's Ross Barkley's heat map? There. Got it for you. Sorry. This is Ross Barkley's heat map. You can see exactly where he's trying to exploit. You can see that they're trying to get in this area here, and this area is obviously the counter-attacking area that Luton are trying to launch the ball from. He's dropping into the back line, launching the ball down the field, and trying to exploit these 3 runners, right? Not only that, but because of the roles rather than the positions that Liverpool play, and they don't have a destroyer in that midfield, not even someone who kind of sits on Barkley or sits on someone else like that, Because they have had that in other games. They did have that against Chelsea. They knew what they wanted to do with Conor Gallagher. And essentially, Luton tried to do a similar thing, if not the same thing, but a similar thing with Ross Barkley. And Liverpool didn't quite counter that in the right way. Maybe they underestimated some of his quality. Maybe they thought they could deal with that a little bit better in the midfield because they had someone like Ryan Havenberg, or they had a Szoboszlai who was a bit more attuned in this game. Maybe they just felt like that was what they wanted to bait Luton into doing, which is why Virgil van Dijk actually had a pretty good game in this game, and Konate did as well. One of the few times they got caught out was actually on the counter-attack. But you can see here, Szoboszlai in this area, there is no one really here, basically. Right? No one really here, right? And that's kind of the disappointment, right? Ross Barkley was able to operate in these two areas, and Liverpool never really managed to shut him down. That's one of those two areas where Liverpool got exploited. On the right side of Luton's attack, behind Joe Gomez, or trying to get in behind Joe Gomez, pulling Liverpool to one side, giving Luton a whole load of space to run into on the other side. And I don't know why I brought up Darwin Núñez there. Let's talk a little bit about, Szoboszlai didn't have a bad game today. I just don't think he had an amazing game. Sometimes there's times where this Liverpool midfield is still feeling out their shape, but broadly, you can see that is a 3. Really, it's kind of a lopsided box, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't, if that makes sense. Jota is not operating as one of those midfield players. He's operating as a player who finds it deep, drives, right? Let's talk a little bit about that right side for Liverpool. I've spoken about that triangle time and time again between these three guys. Szoboszlai, that is a triangle there that has operated at Liverpool for a very long time. Salah looking wide, although he was looking to get into this area a little bit later once Harvey Elliott came on. And then Darwin Núñez. Darwin was all over the place today. I thought it was fantastic. I actually really enjoyed his striker's performance. I love his confidence. I love the way that he's trying to exploit the space that he gets because of Salah, because of Jota, because of possibly even Joe Gomez on that side. But you can kind of see again, it didn't quite work on this side, right? In terms of Liverpool's positioning. I've not actually got the average positions for, I'll just go average positions in random, right? He's coming inside here as Trent. Konate is getting pulled out wide. So is Virgil van Dijk getting pulled this way. So the midfield's basically getting pulled apart in the middle there, and then they're trying to go through the middle or trying to go here and then pull it back. And that's exactly what they did. You could see on the counter-attack was exactly what they were doing, right? On the opposite side of that, Liverpool tried to then counter that by going to the opposite side of the field. They realised they needed a shape change at one point. Liverpool have been incredibly supportive of Luis Diaz, so watching him come on late, you remember this iconic picture. Watching him come on late and shape the game in such a different way, I'm not even sure Liverpool deserved to draw this game, but you could see how determined he was to get a goal. This was clearly the goal touch. You could see he camped out here for a little while and wasn't quite able to get it away. I don't know if he quite had enough support when he did get into this area. Liverpool, obviously had a really congested area there. And you can see Harvey Elliott on this side tries to get wide. He cuts inside always to this area. This was probably that cross that went in there. Really great cross. It's a classic Liverpool goal, not only for Mane, not only for Salah, not only for Firmino, not only for anyone, even Andy Robertson crashing in at the back post. You can see that is the ball that Harvey Elliott was always looking for. And possibly what's interesting about Harvey Elliott is he gets a bit more space possibly than Trent Alexander-Arnold because they don't necessarily see him as the same level of threat. But what I love is Salah's always creating space for Andy Robertson. Szoboszlai or whoever he subs on for is a very different player. But really, not for Andy Robertson, for Harvey Elliott. But what's interesting about it is Harvey Elliott and Szoboszlai are creating two different roles within this Liverpool team. They're creating two different flows of the ball, should we say. Harvey is slightly more of a facilitator in a different way to the way that Szoboszlai is. And weirdly, what he tries to do is get on the ball, open up a little bit of room, and then someone's going to overlap him, or he's going to manage to get a cross away. He's had a cross from this area a couple of times where Liverpool have scored from it this season. That's that ball in that he's whipping in. Who was the other ball? I can't remember who it was. Might have been Darwin Núñez. Maybe someone in the comments will remember. But the point is, when he comes on, it's like another unit for Liverpool. Luis Diaz comes on, Cody Gakpo came on. I think Liverpool lost their way a little bit when they didn't quite know who was in which position at that point. But you could kind of see they were trying to force it. They were trying to upset what Luton were doing. And to an extent, I think Liverpool thought we will score eventually today. And to an extent, that's right. The main issue being when you don't score, then what is maybe we changed it just slightly too late. If they'd done that maybe 5-10 minutes earlier, maybe Liverpool would have gone on and won the game. I personally want to just talk about one other thing. The counter-attack that led to the goal. Are we calling that handball or not? Because sometimes this season in the Premier League it's been called, sometimes this season in the Premier League that handball has not been called. Obviously he's not moving his hand towards the ball, but sometimes people just get caught with their hands up, like his arms are up, they're in an unnatural position, all these kind of things, right? So I'm kind of wondering at this point what is a handball and isn't a handball. I mean, I get it, like some people are going to go, this by the definition is a handball and isn't. They've been quite inconsistent this season in calling handballs. I think sometimes there's a technicality involved, sometimes there's a, oh, well, that's not quite a handball because of this. And I'm interested to know what you guys think. I think it would have been a very harsh handball. I think it would have been a very, very harsh call in the first place. But at the same time, what is a handball, what isn't? And what is getting in the way of the play, what isn't? And what is VAR doing? Because if Liverpool hadn't have had VAR, I think we would have won that game against Tottenham and they would have been top of the league alongside City, probably second to City at this point, obviously Spurs with a game in hand. I think Liverpool got away with something today. Stats, you can say, obviously, hey, we can spin it and go, hey, there were those 3 goals they should have scored. They only scored 1. Got to pass the eye test. You've got to have the practicality, I think, with that and the forcefulness. And Liverpool didn't quite have that forcefulness. Weirdly, they sort of floated above the game today. There were times where they got sucked into it by Luton, and you don't really want to get sucked into it by Luton. I think the smart thing to do here is to, especially with this Liverpool team this season, is to try to play around them, try to not get sucked into these tackles, tit-for-tat type relationships out on the field. And broadly, I think this midfield is very good at doing that. Szoboszlai's got the kind of level of holding his chin up arrogance. I think McAllister is probably the guy that's most engaged in that. And then weirdly, like Havenbrook gets in these little one-on-ones, gets around them and gets away, and he's got loads of space to run into. Yeah, I'd love to know what your guys' opinion of this is. I wonder whether this was a game where they could have played an endo and been a bit more combative in that midfield, but maybe Liverpool needed that, like, win the ball back quick distribution that Endo's not quite gotten yet in this midfield. McAllister, he wasn't quite at it today. I'm not slagging him off. I think he's a fantastic player, but I think he wasn't quite at it. I think there are a couple of players in that midfield who lost the battle, and that's partially because I said it in my preview to the season. Luton are going to be one of those teams that are horrible to visit. Luton are going to be one of those sides that no one wants to go to this season. And, you know, I mean, Liverpool almost got beaten 1-0. Whether you think they merit it or not is a whole other thing. But the fact is, like, a lot of people I think are going to go to Luton, see a side sit deep against them and struggle to break them down. But they allowed Luton into the game through allowing Ross Barkley into it in this area to operate kind of here. Bit of a blind spot because there was one midfield here, one midfield here, one midfielder here, and Trent isn't really that guy who's going to regulate. And Barkley is a very strong player, and then you've got someone else out here who's just bombing into this area. Those are the 2 areas Liverpool got exploited. I worry against other quality sides that Liverpool are going to get exploited there again, and that Van Dijk and Konate sort of get stuck and split, and it becomes a bit of an issue. It's not to say that Liverpool weren't good, but I don't think they were conclusive. I don't think there was enough finishing today. There was that, when I say there's enough finishing today, that's a stupid thing to say, but I think that there were times where they didn't take the opportunity and they kind of all look at each other and go, oh. They've gotten away with a few this season. You can't keep getting away with them. And you could probably list them on one hand, but with only about 11 games gone, it is 11 games gone, in the Premier League at least, getting away with it on 33% of those probably isn't where you want to be at this point in the season. It's a good time for Liverpool to have this. They're going to Europe, which is a game I'm going to. I'm flying with the team, guys. I'm flying on the plane that goes with the team, not the actual team plane, although I would be interested to see what's happening there. Possibly. I will be in Toulouse. Let me know what's going on in Toulouse. I think someone else messaged me and said, where are you going to be in Toulouse? I'll see you there. If you DM me, I'll let you know the hotel that I am going to be near, and we can meet up, have a few drinks, see what the lads are saying, if you're going to be out there. You know me. Typical Scouser. Don't. And yeah, it's going to be good. Look forward to seeing you guys out in Toulouse. Thanks a lot for watching this evening. Appreciate you, as always. Lucho, we are with you. Yeah, I don't know what else to say for him, because at this point, I just think it's a really tragic, horrible situation, and I can't imagine the weight that's on that family. Harvey, you're fantastic. Lewis, you're also fantastic. We didn't even get into talking about Mo Salah today. We will talk about him again. I'm going to talk a little bit about this Liverpool midfield rebuild. What happens in January? Did you see the Copa Libertadores? Let me know. I will chat to you guys in a little while. Much love. Bye.